Hi everybody, it's Geoff from Abel here in Brooklyn in our Industry City location. And today we've got a first look at an exciting new camera from Sony. This is the latest in their cinema line. This is the FX6. We've also got on the camera here the first in a new series of hybrid cinema lenses from Sony. This is the FEC 16-35 T3.1 G, which we'll talk about in a little bit. The FX6 follows the FX9 in this new cinema line of cameras from Sony that use full-frame sensors. The FX6, as you can see, is considerably smaller and lighter than the FX9, sort of is reminiscent of the FS5 and the FS5 II. The sensor, the full-frame sensor in this camera, seems to have a lot in common with the A7S III. In terms of its low light capability and large photo site size and resolution. Anyway, there's a lot to talk about, so let's take a closer look. As you can see, the camera body inherits a lot of its DNA from the FS5 and the FS5 II, as well as the FX9, and provides a nice complement of professional audio and video inputs and outputs. We can see two full-size 3-pin XLRs here on the top handle, as well as the standard multi-interface shoe, which can also bring in 2 channels of audio for up to 4 total channels that can be fed into the camera. We've also got a 12G SDI port for 4K video out over 1 cable. It can be set to 6G and 3G as well. And it can also be used to output a raw signal to compatible external recorders. And then there's also a dedicated BNC terminal for timecode input and output that's switchable on the camera. The FX6 has Sony's excellent phase detect autofocus, including face tracking and real-time eye autofocus when used with native Sony lenses on the full-frame E-mount that this camera features. Taking a closer look at the sensor, it's a 10.2 megapixel backside illuminated CMOS imager with a very fast scan rate. Sony's claiming minimal rolling shutter on this. And it supports some very impressive high frame rates as well as the very high sensitivity. The ISO goes to a staggering 409,600 and has a dual ISO capability with a low base and a high base in terms of sensitivity. In S-Log3, the low base is 800 and the high base is 12,800, similar to the FX9. Unlike the FS5 and the FS5 II, the FX6 is much more like the FX9 in terms of menu layout and capabilities. We've got full Cine EI mode on the FX6 and over 15 stops of dynamic range with S-Log3. In custom mode, the S-Cinetone look is available, and the FX6 uses full scene files in custom mode rather than picture profiles. The camera has 2 memory card slots capable of accepting the new CF Express Type A cards, as well as older UHS-2 SDXC cards. To get the most from the camera, you want the new Type A cards, but a number of the formats can be recorded on older cards, which a lot of us likely already own. The camera shoots to Sony's XAVC codec in intraframe class 300 for 4K and class 100 for HD. It can also use a long GOP version of XAVC, which is 8-bit 420 in UHD, but 10-bit 422 in full HD. Finally, the SDI terminal can output a raw signal in either DCI 4K or UHD for use with an external recorder such as an Atomos. Some other quick specs. When shooting in DCI 4K and using the full-frame imager mode, the camera supports up to 60 FPS and up to 120 FPS in UHD. Full-frame HD, 1920 by 1080, can go all the way to 240 FPS. And we're told there's no pixel binning or line skipping when scaling the full-frame image down to HD resolution. There's also a Super 35 crop mode available that supports up to 120 FPS in full HD. I should note that the full-frame imager is actually a little bit over 4K, which provides a small amount of oversampling, but should also be perfect for performing post-capture stabilization in tools like Sony's Catalyst Browse which uses data that was recorded during shooting to post-stabilize. And now onto the lens. The FEC 16 to 35mm T3.1 is the first in a series of hybrid full-frame cinema lenses from Sony for E-mount. It has a removable mini servo, which gives really nice control over zoom speed using either the rocker on the FX6 grip or there's also a rocker on the top handle. And also, since all three axes, focus, iris, and zoom, can be controlled electronically, it makes it perfect for remote production where an operator may need to be physically distant from the camera. The optics in this lens look to be superb, and we're really excited for this new line of native full-frame cinema lenses from Sony. Well, that about wraps it up for our first look at the new FX6 full-frame cinema line camera and 16 to 35mm T3.1 hybrid cinema lens from Sony. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you in the next video.